In an event that will reverberate through the Middle East for years to come, Hassan Nassrallah, the longtime leader of Hezbollah, has been killed by targeted Israeli airstrikes in a dramatic and historic operation. His elimination marks a victory in Israel's decades-long conflict with Hezbollah, an organization Nasrallah led with an iron grip for over 30 years. But this pivotal event raises many questions here in Israel. Will Hezbollah survive without its head? Will there be a major retaliation from Hezbollah's key backer, Iran, or one of its proxies? What will that retaliation look like? Over the weekend, we've seen the conflict escalate with rockets targeting Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and even the Houthis firing at Israel's national airport. How this impacts the ongoing war with Hamas, and crucially, the fate of the hostages remains uncertain but critical. All eyes are now on what comes next. In the north, meanwhile, the Israeli Air Force remained on the offensive, and there are foreign media reports that small IDF incursions into Lebanon may already be underway. At the same time, the now leaderless Hezbollah fired dozens of rockets into Israel, forcing much of the Israeli population to receive a red alert and seek shelter. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
According to U.S. media reports, the IDF may have begun or is about to begin small operations inside Lebanese territory. Two U.S. officials told ABC News that the small IDF incursions are intended to take out Hezbollah positions near the border. The IDF said it's completed the mobilization of two reserve brigades. The Etzioni and Alon brigades were sent to northern Israel to bolster troops there amid the possibility of a ground offensive.
נערכים כתף אל כתף עם פיקוד צפון לכניסה של תמרון קרקעי. נערכים, אם יופעל, זו החלטה מעלינו.
Nasrallah and other top Hezbollah commanders were targeted by dozens of bunker-busting bombs dropped by Israeli fighter jets at Hezbollah's main headquarters in Dahia, Beirut. It's likely the last thing Nasrallah did was watch Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech at the UN General Assembly in New York. It took half a day for Hezbollah to confirm Nasrallah's death. It did not indicate who would be his replacement and vowed to continue fighting Israel. After the strike, the IDF ramped up its airstrikes against Hezbollah assets in Beirut and other areas. The IDF continued waves of strikes in the Bekaa to destroy missiles and launchers and further degrade Hezbollah capabilities. Israel eliminated much of Hezbollah's most senior leadership in recent weeks. The commander of Hezbollah's southern front, Ali Karaki, was killed alongside Nasrallah.
האויב רצה התשה, הוא מקבל כתישה. יש מהלומה אחרי מהלומה. בפעילים המרכזיים, בשרשרת הפיקוד, מהלכים דרמטיים. בלקיחת היכולת הטילנית והרקטית, ועוד הרבה מאוד פעולות שמתבצעות. ובסוף יש פה דבר שהוא פחות מאורגן ופחות מנוהל. ואת זה אנחנו צריכים לנצל, כי אנחנו מחכים להזדמנות הזאת הרבה זמן, גם אני באופן אישי, לא רק בשנה האחרונה, הרבה שנים. יש לנו חשבונות פתוחים פה עם הרבה גורמים על הרבה שנים. ובקצה אנחנו רוצים לחיות פה כמו שצריך.
IDF Chief of Staff Halevi said he hopes the blow will change Hezbollah's actions and alter the course of the war.
זה לא סוף ארגז הכלים, זה צריך להיות מאוד ברור. יש עוד כלים קדימה ללכת, והמסר הוא מסר פשוט, מי שמאיים על אזרחי מדינת ישראל נדע להגיע בצפון, בדרום, גם במקומות יותר רחוקים.
The IDF announced it would not allow any weapons transfers to Hezbollah and warned it could strike Beirut International Airport. An Iranian plane turned back. Within hours of Nasrallah's killing, Hezbollah renewed rocket fire into Israel. Over the weekend, much of the Israeli population in the north and center had a red alert and were required to shelter. But the Hezbollah response has been less intense than many expected. Over the weekend, two surface-to-surface missiles were fired from Lebanon. One landed in the sea off the coast of Tel Aviv, and the second was shot down by air defense over northern Israel. Dozens of rockets were fired from Lebanon at the Upper Galilee, Haifa, Tzfat, the Jezreel Valley, and Wadi Ara. A long-range rocket set off sirens in Samaria, and a rocket landed in an open area north of Jerusalem. Air defense intercepted a lone missile fired from Yemen that was targeting Tel Aviv. Most of the rockets were intercepted by air defense or fell in open areas. There's speculation that the killing of top Hezbollah commanders and the destruction of many rockets and launchers is hampering Hezbollah abilities to hit back more strongly.
Joining me now is Lieutenant Colonel in Reserves, Doron Avital. Doron, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Doron, Nasrallah is assassinated in a historic turning point event, but is it indeed a turning point in your opinion? What might the implications be?
I'm sure it's a turning point. This is a figure that almost can be, we can think about him as a head of state. He's a head of a terror organization, but his positioning in the landscape of the last 30 years in the Middle East is much more than that. He's the strongest proxy of Iran in the region, a powerhouse in Lebanon. So his figure is much more, it's bigger than even the role he was playing technically or formally, and his demise is the beginning of a new chapter. We have to think, what's this new chapter? What are the implications? Iran has to calibrate its moves. We have to think seriously. It's a turning point for sure.
Now, is there a Hezbollah without Hassan Nassrallah, in your opinion? Will they be able to function without Nasrallah? I mean, we are seeing dozens of rockets still penetrating Israel.
Well, I hate to predict. The question is whether you think short-term or long-term. Short-term, clearly there are forces in the ground, there are launchers, there are weapon ricochets, that are still there and they're still shooting, but not to the extent or to the precision or to the magnitude that we were considering beforehand. So we have to evaluate what happened even to our estimation. So the weekend, the whole echelon of command is gone. And so the short term, they are very weak, and we have to think what we have to take from it, what we have to take in terms of the southern tip of Lebanon. Should we enter, shouldn't we? How do we bring our citizens? In the long term, who tells? When the former commander, was taken in 92, Hezbollah was a very small organization and not that of magnitude, and with Nasrallah it became a powerhouse. So we have to be careful, and we have to see also Lebanon. How would Lebanon react and try to form itself in this phase after Hezbollah, and how would Iran play in Lebanon? Whether Iran would insist on taking a stronghold in Lebanon again. This is a turning point. We have to be very alert to any implications forward.
Now, from what you know or can assume, did Israel have the ability to take out Nasrallah all along and was waiting for the right moment? And if so, why have they waited so long?
No, my feeling, there were some opportunities. Of course, an opportunity is a window of opportunity and has to do with the probability of success, because you can't even secure it, even if you know that it's in a certain location. For sure, if it's in the command center, which is deep underground. So, and also there are other considerations. I think we were not rushing to hit leaders in this magnitude. I want to remind the audience that in 82, for example, there was this famous thing where the Yasser Arafat, the head of the PLO, was under the aims of our soldiers. We didn't decide back then that we should take him on. To take on a figure in this magnitude is a decision that you don't take lightly. And then there was a moment, and the consequences after the Gaza war really forced us to really rethink. And I think this was the move, this was the moment, and it was successful.
Now, Iran has vowed retaliation for Nasrallah's death. What kind of response might we expect from Iran or from its proxies across the region?
First of all, we have to take them seriously, even that we can estimate that they are not as strong as we will consider them to be. So something like the 13th of April, I think we are well prepared, but this is an option. Trying to work from Lebanon for sure, and for sure, we have to be very careful in terms of Israeli targets outside of Israel. I'm sure applying terror to senior Israeli figures, to institutions abroad. We have to be very careful. We have to take them in their word and see what's up.
Lieutenant Colonel in Reserves, Doron Avital, thank you very much. Who was Hassan Nassrallah and what was his impact on Israel and the world? A brief explainer from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
Hassan Nassrallah, born in Beirut in 1960, co-founded the Hezbollah terrorist organization in 1982 and became its Secretary General 10 years later. He was assassinated by Israel at the age of 64. During his more than 30 years as Hezbollah's leader, he orchestrated, planned, and executed thousands of terrorist attacks against Israeli citizens, Jewish communities, and people around the world, leading to the deaths of thousands.
هذا الموضوع أنه المقاومة لها الحق أن تكمل طريقها حتى تحرير الأرض ولها الحق أن تدافع عن شعبها بكل الإمكانات المتاحة.
The IDF reported that under Nasrallah's leadership, Lebanon was turned into a heavily armed base with advanced precision weapons aimed at Israel and the entire region. He also founded the Radwan Force with the goal of carrying out a massacre in northern Israel.
يجب أن نتعاون جميعا لتقديم المساعدة لأهل غزة لإعادة إعمار غزة ولإخراجها من المعاناة التي يعيشها أهلها دون قيد أو شرط.
Nasrallah had pledged to retaliate against Israel for its recent strikes on Lebanon and Gaza. But meanwhile, Israel assassinated him over the weekend. Now, the full impact of his death remains to be seen, and only time will reveal the true consequences.
U.S. President Joe Biden called the killing of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nassrallah by Israel a measure of justice yesterday and reaffirmed America's full support for Israel's right to defend itself against Iran-backed groups. Devo Klein has more.
President Biden reiterated that Hezbollah were responsible for killing thousands of Americans, Israelis, and Lebanese civilians. He noted that Friday's strike on Hezbollah's headquarters in Beirut that killed Nasrallah was a response to the terror group's own decision to open up a northern front against Israel after Hamas's October 7th attacks. Biden also directed Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin to strengthen U.S. military defenses in the Middle East to prevent further escalation. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris echoed Biden's remarks, stating that the death of Nasrallah brought justice for the, quote, countless innocent people affected in Lebanon, Israel, Syria, and beyond. She reaffirmed her unwavering commitment to Israel's security and stressed the importance of Israel's right to defend itself against Iran and its allied militant groups. When asked about an Israeli ground incursion into Lebanon, Biden urged for a ceasefire. Both he and Harris emphasized that the U.S. remains focused on de-escalating the situation in Gaza and Lebanon through diplomatic efforts. Biden also confirmed the U.S. is responding to missile attacks on its warships in the Red Sea by the Houthis, following Friday's interception of missiles and drones by U.S. Navy warships. Meanwhile, Iran is calling for a United Nations Security Council meeting to address Israel's actions. Iran's UN ambassador issued a strong warning against any attacks on Iranian diplomatic premises, vowing to defend its national interests. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei urged Muslims to support Lebanon and Hezbollah, declaring the forces of resistance will shape the region's future.
بر همه مسلمانان فرض است که با امکانات خود در کنار مردم لبنان و حزب الله سرافراز بایستند و در رویارویی با رژیم غاصب و ظالم و خبیث آن را یاری کنند.
Tensions remain high as Iran vows retaliation for Nasrallah's death, threatening to push the conflict further into the region. How things will unfold from here on may possibly change the face of the entire Middle East.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking at the UN General Assembly, vowed to eliminate northern threats posed by Hezbollah, yet advocated for peace with Saudi Arabia. His speech came only an hour before Israel eliminated Hezbollah leader Hassan Nassrallah. More on that from ILTV's editor, Mayan Hoffman.
In a speech that hinted at Israel's upcoming strike against Hezbollah leader Hassan Nassrallah, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the United Nations General Assembly on Friday. He declared that Israel would eliminate the threats in the north, which are preventing the country from safely returning its citizens to their homes.
Well, I've come here today to say enough is enough. We won't rest until our citizens can return safely to their homes. We will not accept a terror army perched on our northern border able to perpetrate another October 7th-style massacre. As long as Hezbollah chooses the path of war, Israel has no choice, and Israel has every right to remove this threat and return our citizens to their homes safely. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Several delegations walked out as Netanyahu approached the lectern, while supporters in the gallery cheered. Netanyahu blamed Iran for the conflict, stating that Israel is defending itself on 7 fronts. He also called for tougher action on Iran's nuclear program. Framing his speech around the Torah's theme of choosing a blessing or a curse, Netanyahu warned that while Iran pulls the region backward, peace with Saudi Arabia and the Muslim world could lead to historic reconciliation. That is the choice today, he said, the curse of Iran's aggression or the blessing of Arab-Jewish peace.
Israel seeks peace. Israel yearns for peace. Israel has made peace and will make peace again. A normalization deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel seemed closer than ever. But then came the curse of October 7th. But to truly realize the blessing of a new Middle East, we must continue the path we paved with the Abraham Accords 4 years ago. Above all, this means achieving a historic peace agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia.
Family members of hostages accompanied Netanyahu to New York and listened to a speech from the gallery. The PM delivered a message to Hamas that aligns with the United States. Return the hostages, and Israel is ready for a ceasefire agreement.
This war can come to an end now. All that has to happen is for Hamas to surrender, lay down its arms, and release all the hostages.
On October 7th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Vision TV will present the world premiere of a new documentary from filmmaker Martin Himmel named Forgotten Expulsion: Jews from Arab Lands. The film sheds light on a largely overlooked chapter of history, the displacement of 850,000 Jews from Arab countries following the establishment of the State of Israel. With tensions flaring in the Middle East, the film challenges the narrative of Israel as a colonial state and highlights the centuries-old Jewish presence in the region. I want to welcome filmmaker Martin Himmel here with me in studio today.
Nice to be here.
Thank you for joining us, Martin. Martin, I'd like to start with asking you what motivated you to create this documentary?
Well, the fact that a chunk of Middle East history of the Arab-Israeli conflict has been ignored. Everybody knows that Palestinians are refugees, were refugees. Everybody has heard of the Palestinian refugee problem, but very few people realize that an equal number, actually more than an equal number of Jewish refugees were also displaced by this conflict. About 700,000 Palestinian refugees were displaced or ran away, depending on how you want to look at it and the situation. And 850,000 Jews were forced to leave their homes in Arab countries throughout the Middle East, from Iraq, Syria, Libya, Algeria. They emigrated, but were coaxed to emigrate from Morocco. So all this big mass of people has been completely ignored. And in many conflicts, we see populations that get displaced. In the Pakistan-India conflict, for example, millions of Muslims were displaced from India. And in Pakistan, millions of Hindus were displaced, and the populations migrated to wherever they went, and the problem was solved. But here it's never solved.
So that brings me to my next question. Why do you believe this piece of history has been largely overlooked?
Because it's inconvenient for the people who are always advocating an anti-Israeli perspective or an anti-Semitic perspective. I think it's more anti-Semitic than anything else. Anything that will justify a Jewish presence in the Middle East is expunged, moved out, and taken away. So they follow a false narrative that it was just European Jews came here and that they were just Europeans who looked for a place to come to, which is completely false, because Jews have been indigenous to this part of the world for 3,500 years.
So now, after the October 7th attacks, we saw an incredible surge in pro-Palestinian and anti-Semitic protests. We saw it everywhere around the world, certainly in the United States, all chanting a very, very specific narrative, one that doesn't include this historical narrative presented in your film. And why do you think that is?
Well, it's a classic anti-Semitic response. Basically, when they say Zionists out of Palestine, they're saying Jews out of Israel. And the whole pretense, what's in the world today, what's very much in vogue is colonialism, meaning anti-colonialism. Anything that had a colonialist bent is evil. So, for instance, Canada, there's great anger over the fact that white people came in and took indigenous lands. In America, white people took indigenous lands. In Australia, white people came in and took indigenous lands. No one's asking to destroy Canada, the United States, or Australia and expel them. Only one country they asked to expel what they see as white colonialists, which are European Jews who came to the land of Israel. But what they're ignoring is that they didn't just come to the land of Israel. They've been indigenous to that region for 3,500 years. Jews have lived in just got to read the Bible. Jews have lived in the land of Israel for 3,500 years. They've lived in major Middle East countries consistently until 1948. So if you take away the indigeneity of the situation, you disrupt their argument. And that they don't want to do. So it's convenient to label Jews as just white colonialists.
Just briefly, do you have a personal connection to the stories in this film?
I got a personal emotional connection, if you want to put it that way. I mean, I interviewed many people who had very intricate and interesting lives in Egypt and Iraq. We have a character, for example, who actually went back to Iraq because he got acquainted with the new government after Saddam Hussein and tried to salvage Jewish artifacts, tried to rebuild ancient tombs of prophets, tried to rebuild synagogues. And so this passion to try to salvage this Judaica and to preserve what's left, it was very moving.
Martin Himmel, thank you very much. Very important film.
Thank you.
And with Israel now in the thick of a multi-front war, the Israel Innovation Authority has highlighted the challenges and opportunities in the tech sector in the shadow of October 7th. More from ILTV's Ariella Lahiani.
Israel's high-tech sector, a key part of the economy, has remained resilient despite challenges from the Iron Swords War. A report from the Israel Innovation Authority, marking 1 year since the conflict, highlights the strong investment levels but notes concerns over stalled employment growth. From October 2023 to August 2024, Israeli tech companies raised nearly $9 billion, keeping Israel as the third largest global tech hub. However, while investments remain strong, the report warns that stagnant job growth could hurt the broader economy, especially with high-tech driving much of Israel's exports and tax revenue. Minister of Innovation Gilad Gamliel stressed the need for action to ensure long-term growth. The report shows a shift towards research and development roles, whilst business and product roles decline, which could harm Israel's global competitiveness and limit job opportunities for non-tech workers. Additionally, investments are concentrated in mature companies, particularly in cybersecurity, now 35% of all tech investments. The report calls for more funds to support early-stage startups to drive innovation. Meanwhile, high-tech salaries continue to rise, nearly tripling the national average, highlighting both the demand for tech talent and the need for diverse opportunities to prevent growing economic inequality. Despite these challenges, the report emphasizes that with government support and strategic investments, Israel's high-tech sector can remain a global leader and return to strong growth post-crisis.
Now, I'm thrilled to invite you to the next ILTV community webinar. This is a chance for our paid subscribers to connect directly with our editor-in-chief, Mayan Hoffman, and dive into the questions you care most about regarding Israel. The webinar will take place this week on October 1st and is exclusively for our app subscribers. If you're already part of the ILTV family, watch your inbox for a registration link. Not a subscriber yet? No worries, there's still time to join us.
Sagot Winery, where passion meets tradition. Nestled in the heart of Benjamin, our vineyards yield exquisite wines, crafted with generations of expertise.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, mostly sunny skies are expected alongside rising temperatures set to reach highs of 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Sivan Raviv. Be well, be safe, and thank you so much for watching.